Hey friends, so welcome back to DBC special live edition on Tuesday nights in April because it is National Poetry Month. And so we have just Mike Johnston on the show, the author of You Are Poetry, one of our new DBC releases. And he is going to be sharing all kinds of amazing poetry is math and how to integrate poetry into the math curriculum. And so I'm super excited to talk to him in just a few moments about that. But before we get too far into this, remember every single one who joins us over in the comments enters themselves to win a free, enters themselves, yes, a free prize. I wasn't going to tell them till the end. I forgot. So enters themselves to win a free prize tonight. Normally on Tuesday night, we don't do a free prize, but tonight we will be doing a free prize and we'll be doing 2 free prizes. So you want to get your name over in those comment sections. Tell us who you are, what you do, where you're from, whatever. You can put them on a different line, every single one of them, whatever you want to do. That'll enter you to win a free prize at the end of the show. So you definitely want to keep those comments rolling in. And Mike, in case somebody hasn't joined us on Tuesday night, I hate to make you do it all over again, but we might have some new people in here tonight. Please do tell them who you are, what you do. And man, if you missed last week, you need to go check it out. He rapped on here and it was so awesome.
Yeah. I did the best I could for sure. As a big hip hop fan, I showed my students the next day. I said, you got to put yourself out there, and this is what it looks like. And, I'm a huge hip hop fan, and I got a couple huge hip hop fans in the class, and they were like, respectfully, we love you. Not the best we've heard. And it's fine. So then we took off, and we just kept on writing a little more hip hop that day. So it was, it really is, it snowballed into something really great. So, so I will do my intro again. Which is great. Even though I'm happy to see some familiar faces already. Kristen, hi, super happy to teach you. Oh no, don't worry if you missed the rap. The video's still available.
It's still live on YouTube.
Out there. There's nothing I can do to remove that rap from the universe now, Kristen. You can watch it whenever you like on repeat. So I'm Mike Johnston from Winnipeg, Manitoba. It's a beautiful day here, which is nice because when we started this series, on the first Tuesday of the month, there was snow on the ground, and today it's like plus 18, which is great. And I'm super pumped to be here with you. I'm a middle school teacher by day, but I also am a huge fan of poetry education. So I advocate for that as much as I possibly can. I participate in slam poetry, which is a competitive type of writing and performing poetry, which got me into a whole big adventure, which eventually got me into classrooms teaching that aspect of what I like so much. And that led to writing the book, which is You Are Poetry, which is connecting people to doing poetry in their classrooms, which is phenomenal. It's super, super exciting. And it's been a great adventure that has allowed me to connect with a ton of people. And it's just been really a lot of fun. So hi everyone who's checking in on the side. It's nice to have you here for sure. Pumped to see some new names already and some older faces as well that are older in terms of like I recognize you. It's not an ageism comment by any means.
We don't do that. Definitely not. Well, Reagan is in the house and her book is coming out really soon and it's all about guided math. So I can guess why she might be interested in poetry as math.
You know what? No, the pressure is on.
It's on.
Like Reagan, who is writing a book about math.
Yeah. It's a dynamic book. So if you know anyone doing some guided math, that's the book they need for sure. So tonight we are going to be talking about Roland. Good to have you.
Hey,
Mike talked about you last week when he was rapping.
No, I did. I shouted you out last week about how great you are at Rolly is one of the best teachers I've ever met. Phenomenal educator.
That's what you said. That's what you said.
I say it again. 2 weeks in a row. I'm telling everybody how great this guy is.
Reagan's ready. She's ready for this Poetry is Math. All right, friends. So we are about to dive in. I'm going to let Mike take the floor. I kind of back off, and he just teaches you all kinds of ways to integrate poetry in math. So have fun. Take it away, Mike. We are ready to learn.
I have to admit, I'm a little bit wind out of my sails now. I'm a little sad because it's been 3 times in a row where Tara has said that she's going to let Mike take the mic, and she just is very tickled about her own joke usually. But I'll let Mike take the floor. That's good too. I'll take it, absolutely. I'm super pumped to talk a little bit about how poetry is math. I think poetry is math is one of the biggest challenges I get. I have been advocating for poetry in the classroom, poetry education, and what that can bring to people for a long time now. And one of the biggest challenges I get from educators is always, this doesn't fit with what I do, which I love the challenge on in a normal day, but math especially. There's a lot of people who will sort of come to me and say, I don't really do poetry. I'm a math teacher. And I love to address that right away because math and poetry are actually 2 of the oldest languages that we have. They both represent humanity trying to communicate. They both go back to a time where, people would meet each other and they would need to sort of share their stories when language even, wasn't a commonality between them. So numbers and ways of storytelling and poetry became a really commonplace for people, which is really great. So math and poetry grew up together in the universe, I like to think. In fact, the American Mathematical Society has a yearly math poetry contest. So they're into my vibe. They understand what's going on. I think that the poetry approach to math is unique and interesting for me because it's one of the only places where I feel like you can go 2 ways with how you set your brain to it. There's a lot of poetry is everywhere in a lot of situations, but there's a lot of in math you can go 2 directions. One, I find you can teach the math first, like really teach about the concepts and really solidify the concepts, and then use poetry to bolster the connection, right? Use poetry as an emotional understanding of math concepts and really sort of sew all those concepts into the bones of the learner. Or 2, you can link mathematical principles directly to personal emotional experiences. So making numbers a part of the poetry of the person. And here's what I mean by that. Oh, absolutely. Kristen's pointing out already that music has a lot of math patterns. We're going to get to that, Kristen. It's you got good thoughts. I love it. Kristen in the house. So if you teach the math first, think of using like syllables as numbers that you can feel and interact with on different levels. If you start with something as simple as syllables, it lets them know that you can feel like even their names are numerical. Everything about the universe can be viewed numerically if you sort of break it down to a syllable, a chewable, experiential little block of something consumable. It's all about being able to see the poetry in those little pieces, right? Being able to sort of line things up and give them value. A couple of really specific examples of what I do for that sort of work. It's a couple of forms like tie-cube poetic forms. It's like 3 syllables in 3 sentences in 3 stanzas. So you really have to think about the mechanics of how to put that together. It's called tie-cube, I just said. Because it's perfection in thought process and development. So if you want to take syllables and really sort of force a thought process of poetry into the syllables, that's great. You also have things like haiku, cinquains. There's so many number and syllable based pieces that bring poetry into just the real basics of understanding numerical progression, which is really important. Higher level students who want to sort of incorporate math can do things like look at poetry that is written in certain rhythm and meter, like iambic pentameter, right? You can take the difference between famous writers and sort of make the connections as far as why of the emotionality there. Like there's a big difference between Shakespeare's writing style and like a Dr. Seuss writing style. And those are important for emotional experience. How do you take the the structure of poetry, the actual numeracy of poetry, and translate that into an emotional experience or response. You could really do a lot with trying to figure out what part of that looks like emotional value, right? What kind of pacing looks like emotional value? I've done positive and negative games. What I mean by that is, students will take cards, like playing cards, and we'll lift them up. The positive cards are the black cards, black suited cards, and the negative cards are the red suited cards. And whatever amount of mathematics they have there, whatever number they get from that equation, that's the number of syllables they have to use to write. So you can challenge anything through syllables. So you take a really interesting integer showdown, and every time you have a response to that, whatever answer you get, you sort of write that piece. Now you're going to ask about the negative piece. What happens if you get a negative number? This is where it gets really cool as well. If you get a +3 as your response, you have to have 3 words that have a positive connotation. But if you have a -3, then you have to think of 3 words that elicit a really negative feeling for you. And that way the person is connecting that integer numeracy with their emotional response to a piece. So there's a lot of ways to keep really simple numeracy in the concepts that you're learning and really sort of translate it to poetic form, which is great on its own. That's a really simple strategy. But one of the things I like to do is the second way of approaching it is to really try to find tangible ways to link math to the moment, right? Link math to a personal experience. One of my favorite poetry activities, when I had a math teacher that I worked with, challenged me. Again, poetry and math don't really belong in the same space. So I asked if I could borrow his class and prove him wrong. And luckily he liked a good challenge. So we actually worked syllable-based codes into algebraic equations where you had to solve for what was hidden in the message of the poem. So solving for X was both, you had to find the answer, but using the syllables, you actually had to find the intention as well. So once you solved for X, you can actually solve in 2 ways. You could solve by doing the full math equation, the full algebra, until you found that X equaled that syllabled out emotional response, like happy or sad or whatever they had chosen. Or you could just solve it by understanding the words that were in there. So there was a 2 sides of the brain sort of working together on that one, which is really neat. Of course, the kids loved it. They loved the challenge. It was epic. It was amazing. I got invited back, which was great. And before I forget as well, in terms of using something that is physically structured, using the syllables and physical structures of the page, I've also done geometry, the physical shape of a page completely. So what we did was we took an example by Lewis Carroll, The Mouse's Tail, T-A-L-E, which is a poem shaped like the tail of a mouse using the words. And we actually took the measurements of a page and we sort of broke it down into quadrants and figured out what we could do with the math value of each little syllable, each little section that we could fit into there and still have it be a shape that would represent what we were talking about. So there's tons of math there as well. So the second way you can sort of do it is linking this idea of math to the moment. This is my favorite because as much as it is awesome to get into a classroom and turn numbers into the structure of poetry and then find ways to sort of link that emotionality, going at it backwards and asking yourself the question of how do I make this math a moment is one of my favorite questions. How do I make this math into poetry? How do I make it into something emotionally consumable, even though it's really sort of a numbers driven thing to begin with, which is really neat. So how do you turn math into a moment? My favorite question that I like to challenge math poets with. And here's some of the ways that we've done that. I got invited into a class, and one of the things that was a challenge was they wanted to do geometry. And they were like, how do you turn geometry into poetry? And we actually developed a unit where we did the complex geometry of Islamic design. Math of Islamic design, one of the most ancient art forms, hundreds of years old, is really, really complex math based on really, really simple principles, all done with like a compass and a ruler. So we actually studied the geometry of Islamic design and tried to figure out what was the mathematical practice and the emotional meaning behind it. We did a ton of research, and it gave us an opportunity not only to think about the geometry of how things were done, but we really got to dive into the emotional experience of what does it mean to be a person who's trying to use mathematics as a religious experience, trying to use mathematics as a way to communicate with the universe, because a lot of these mathematic patterns, they build these beautiful temples, and you wouldn't really understand them until you stepped back and then stepped forward and then stepped back. Because if you're really close, they're very detailed, but the more you move back, the more it seems like they move with you, and you really get a sense of sort of really physically connecting with the building. So we used poetry as geometry, and as experiencing religious practice that a lot of the kids in the class had never done before, which led us into tessellations, which was great. We talked about tessellations, and we used tessellations, and the students built tessellations of their own daily lives, of complex mathematical patterns showing, how much of their daily lives were spent in each piece, which really sort of brought the math into their own moment, like who they are as people, which is phenomenal. And then those older students, older poets, became student leaders, and we went down to hang out with younger poets, and those younger poets who are studying patterning in their class, like the AB patterns, or all those little simplified patterns. We figured out how to turn their little everyday lives into those patterns, right? So we took things like, I do soccer every Saturday, I do church every Sunday, but on a daily, I do bath at 8 o'clock, brush teeth at 8:30, bedtime at 9. And we turned it into patterns based on, hours, days, weeks, months. And we sort of saw the patterns in their own existence, which is a really, really cool thing. So my own little guy came home one day, and he was like moving, he was moving all his little Cheerios, like Fruit Loops. They have to be colored, right? So the Fruit Loops that he was moving around, he was like, we're supposed to put them in a pattern. And I was like, that's great. Let's look for the pattern in who you are. And we actually built this. And he was like, oh my goodness, I am a pattern. He pronounces it pattern at this point, but like it's which is adorable, so I don't correct him. But it's beautiful that he could see the pattern in his own life, which is great. We have, if you want to create your own complex geometry, there's a really great app as well called Geometry Pad, which is like you can actually go in there and physically construct like three-dimensional geometric shapes as well. So it's kind of a neat idea in there, and allows students to write the complex geometry of their own stories, which was cool. One of my other favorites, I feel like I just love all the things that I've done. So whenever I do say like this is one of my favorites, I mean it. I absolutely mean it. One of my favorite math poetry activities that I've ever done, and it seems the most meaningful, and I've had students come back and say, this is what we've kept because it's just so phenomenal. We worked on graphing. There's a lot of different graphs you can do, but the idea here is that they understand fractions and percentages and visual representations of those things. So instead of going with the real simplification of like pizza, right? It's easy enough to tell somebody, take a pizza, cut it in half, give half to me. That's always the joke. So cut a pizza in half, and you understand what half is for sure. But one of the most beautiful poetry things that I've ever done through math, with math, turning math into a moment, was all about the percentages of who you are as a person. So once we understood percentages and fractions and a lot of different ways of sort of putting that, decimal points and everything, a lot of different ways of expressing that, we took those ideas and I asked them, let's develop the full circle of you. Like, tell me all the pieces that fit into who you are as a person, and tell me why. Like, are you 8% a basketball player, and why have you put that as your personal identity? Are you 30% a student, and why have you put that as your number, right? So we had the numbers and the justification, but instead of cutting up little pizza pies, they cut themselves up. They thought about themselves, and they thought about how to present themselves as a person, which ended up being a really pretty phenomenally beautiful thing. So I liked that a lot. I want to look at some of these comments here. These popped up is really, oh yeah, Roland, that's absolutely, creating their shape. That's exactly what I'm talking about. When they can see themselves, it's not just numbers anymore, right? This, for me, I grew up with a little bit of a personal story. My father is a mathematician. Okay, he and I never really met on the same page because he sees the world in numbers and I see the world in feelings. And he and I got along very well. He's like, we're close, and that's fantastic. But whenever he tried to help me with math, it did not go well. It did not go well because for him it was so easy. It was so simple to see numbers sort of moving through. It wasn't until much later in life, and it was until I was much older, that I understood that poetry and math, just like poetry and science, it's all doing the same job. It's trying to find a way to put a planet full of people who are trying to figure things out. It's trying to put them inside a sense of commonality, right? What kind of language can we use where all of us understand what the value of everything around us is, including ourselves? So as soon as I could see myself in those numbers, as soon as I could see my existence in those numbers, it became a lot more meaningful and valuable to sort of extend those numbers outwards. So absolutely, that's what I'm saying. Find the moment in the math, and then that's where the poetry is. You get students to have that emotional connection, either teach the concepts first and then connect them emotionally to it, or find the emotionality and show them the math that already exists in there, because it's two ancient things speaking the same language. I'm checking my time here. Oh, okay, good. I didn't want to talk too much, but I fear I have again. I'm sorry.
Just keep going. If you have some more, I think we're loving it over here. So
I appreciate that. Yeah. I appreciate the space to talk and everything. I'm always worried that I'm talking too much because I get so excited about this, because we could really talk infinitely, because I really do believe that there is poetry absolutely everywhere. It's just a matter of being, willing to sort of see that piece. A lot of what I do in advocating for poetry education is when people come up to me and they say, I don't feel like poetry fits in my class because it's not formally on the curriculum. It's the biggest thing I ask them to do is just stop thinking that way and admit that there's just poetry all around us.
I think through these lives, I mean, the book in and of itself. So if you haven't ordered the book, do yourself a favor, click the link above and the link that Dave put out there too. But you need this book. It's so there's so many things I have to say about it, but one of the easiest ways to describe it is so approachable, and feel like Mike has just done such a great job, just like he has in these lives, at making us feel like, okay, yeah, I can totally see poetry in that. I can totally see poetry in numbers. Who ever thought that? I didn't. and really thinking of myself in those little pattern blocks, that's just beautiful, right? And I just think there's so many. That's just a handful of examples Mike has described on this little live. The book is that times a billion. So you really want to get your hands on that.
That's math. That's math right there.
There you go.
Times a billion. Yeah.
Times a billion.
Not a hyperbole at all. It's times a billion.
So do check it out. We are about to give away some free prizes. So if you haven't gotten a comment in there and you've just been lurking over on the side, we're actually giving away to live participants tonight. So if you're watching this on the playback, you still get the pleasure of all the other lives that we've had on Tuesday, of just getting all this cool information into your brain and taking it to your students. That has not changed, but tonight, Mike and I wanted to do something special, and Dave Burgess and Shelley Burgess were all in. So we have 2 Your Poetry books we'll be giving away to 2 live participants tonight. So if you haven't put your comment over in the comment section, do that now, because I'm about to choose a winner. And I'm about to choose 2 winners. And so we will be, I'll be choosing those in just a moment. I'll be shipping those. So super excited. Yeah, I love it. That I knew some people were listening in here and not saying anything. So I'm glad you're here, Andrew. I'm glad you got your name over there.
Yeah, you definitely want to say a few words with the possibility of winning the book that my son calls his book. A couple of the examples in the book are actually done by my kids, because I was really proud to sort of see what they could do as poets, and they're great little examples. There's a ton of examples from students who are not my kids, but it is my son's book. He calls it his book all the time. So he's 6. He doesn't know the work that went into it. He wrote one thing and he's taken credit, but that's fine. It's fine.
I had a similar thing with Be Real, my little 3-nager. She was my niece. She was 3 at the time. We had a little book snap that we created, a gratitude snap. And so her picture is in my book on the one page. She actually signed all of the first round of books we had. She signed the page.
Yeah.
She signed her page with her little 3-year-old writing. Well, she also calls that her book.
I got a copy of the book with my name on the cover, and I was like, what a neat thing to have happen. And it's autographed by the kids. So it's the best keepsake of all time, which is great.
True. It's so true. I had my son contribute in chapter 3, and then Olivia's picture in there. So they signed the whole first 100 books that I got to send out. They were so stoked. Oh my goodness. So glad to see these comments rolling in over here. I appreciate them. We will be giving away 2 of these books in just a couple more minutes.
Linda, thank you. That's a good idea.
Yes, exactly.
Oh, sorry, I toe-stepped you a little bit there. I just got so excited. My apologies, Sarah.
No, you are good. I'm just giving them a few more seconds to comment. Yeah, we're so grateful. This is our last live tonight.
I just want to point out that Reagan said that something was amazing, and Reagan is the math person, so
there you go. That is confirmation.
Yeah.
You did it. Mic drop. Mic drop. I got a new one. I got a new joke to laugh.
No, mic drop. Absolutely.
Mic, dropping the mic. Mike. We have some dad jokes in here, mom jokes, whatever. But yeah, we have a lot of fun. We've had a lot of fun with these poetry nights. We have 4 of them now on our YouTube channel. They will be linked up together in a little list called Poetry. You Are Poetry. So you can go check the You Are Poetry series anytime you want. Share them with your colleagues. There's Poetry is Science, Poetry is Social Studies, Poetry is Math, and the very first one is Poetry is People. So yeah, you should
Personal pan pizza percentages. Reagan, I'll tell you, any pizza is a personal pizza if you believe in yourself. That's no matter what the size, they're all personal pizzas if you love yourself enough.
It's called self-care.
Yeah, sometimes it really is.
If it's Reagan approved, it must be approved.
I'll take it, yeah.
Yeah, her book is coming out so super soon. I wish I could announce it tonight, but I can't, so I'm not going to. But
I'm excited.
There's one thing I can announce while we're waiting for a few more comments to come in. Next week, we will be doing a teacher appreciation giveaway every single day on Twitter. So if you're not on Twitter, please do log in at least for the week to potentially win. We'll be giving away 2 books every single day to different people. So there'll be 10 different teachers that are going to win a free book. Your Poetry is a part of those books. So if you don't win tonight, click the link above, go ahead and order one, and then hope you win one next week and you can give it to a colleague. I mean, it's a win-win no matter what. So here we go. We are about to give these suckers away, and I'm going to do the scrolly thing that I do over here. And I just land on one, so don't judge, okay, everyone? Okay, our first winner who's gotten all kinds of love tonight is Reagan. Reagan, you are the first winner of You Are Poetry. Hopefully you can take this and apply it in all the math world, but also help your ELA teachers too, and anybody else who doesn't believe that poetry is everywhere. And our next one, here we go for a spin. Our next one is Andrew Easton. I am so glad you got your comment Mister. You are the next winner for You Are Poetry. Andrew is an ELA teacher, or was. He now serves in another capacity, a leadership capacity, but I know you're going to love this book, dear. It's amazing. So Andrew and Reagan, you will need to email me, tara@daveburgessconsulting.com, to send me your mailing information so I can send you your free books. Remember, we will be, thanks for cheering them on. I love y'all. We will be giving away some more books, but don't wait for it. Just go order your You Are Poetry now. And then if you win a free book next week, you might be able to give it away to someone else that you've been really wanting to show your appreciation to. So do that. Get on Twitter. Love on poetry. If you use poetry, might you share them, or if they use any of these ideas throughout the next however long. Remember, every day can be Poetry Day. It doesn't have to be during April.
Yeah.
And
Yep.
If you do, tag Mike and use the hashtag. I'll let him share his contact information really quick.
So the hashtag is #YouArePoetry, and I see them all. So it's super, super inspiring. So please feel free to share. I love it. I love the sharing. At my handle at Twitter is at YouArePoetryEDU, and I'll be waiting there for connection and to show you that poetry is, as Cookie Monster would call it, and all the time food. So I can't wait.
Yes. So do share. And thank you so much for joining us tonight. Thanks for y'all that joined every single Tuesday night. We appreciate you so much. Indeed. And go order your copy of You Are Poetry, and then join Twitter if you're not, and connect with us at DBC_Inc. for next week.
You understand, Rolly.
All right, friends. Well, thank you. Have a great night. We appreciate you so much. Bye, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.